Well, hello there. Welcome to another episode of Needlepoint TV. I'm Ellen Johnson and I'm your host today. I'm delighted to have you here with me. If you're watching as a recording, welcome. It's always great to have those of you who can't catch the show live to be able to watch the replay. So, today we are going to talk about one of my all-time favorite stitches for foliage. I couldn't think of a better topic since we're in September than to dive into talking about a stitch that you can use on the different canvases that you may have that feature trees or, well, any other kind of foliage for that matter. So what we're going to do today, again, is talk about the diamond ray stitch. The diamond ray stitch is an eyelet stitch, and that means that several single stitches share one hole. So you have several stitches that feed into one hole. Now, I have a stitch diagram, so I'll show you what it looks like. Let me find it. Let me pull it up here really quickly so that we go straight there so you can see what the diamond ray stitch looks like. And I am going to share my screen. So let's see. Hang on one second. This is, as always, it has been a little while. Let's see. Let's do it this way. Okay, hold on. I say I'm going to share my screen. And there we go. That's what I needed to punch. Okay. So here we go. Let me go to this one over here. Y'all call this operator error for sure. This is one of those things that it's been just a little while since I've done this. So now you can see the diamond ray stitch, I am hoping. So there we go. Perfect. All right. So the diamond ray stitch is an eyelet stitch. And you can see by looking at it that there are individual stitches that comprise what I call a stitch unit. So that means that there are 5 straight stitches that all feed into one single hole. And those 5 stitches share in that hole. That's what makes this an eyelet stitch. So a couple of things to keep in mind when you're actually doing an eyelet stitch. You want to make sure that you use a lighter weight thread than you typically would when you're working any other kind of stitch, because you have 5 stitches or 5 strands of thread, or if you're using a stranded thread, even more strands of thread all going into the same hole. So again, a lighter weight thread, or if you're using stranded threads, multiple strands in your needle, you'll want to cut back on the number of strands that you use on your or in your needle to execute this stitch, because you don't want it to be so jammed, all those stitches to be so jammed in there together that you lose the definition of each one of those individual stitches that makes up the whole. So this is a 5, again, for those of you that just popped in to join me, this is a 5-stitch unit. So 5 individual straight stitches are executed, and they're all executed into that, or they have a shared hole at the base. So you can see that this stitch, it fans outward. It has a diamond shape, and you can also rotate this stitch. So if you rotate it over onto its side 90 degrees, you can rotate it either direction, or you can flip it so that it's upside down. And it's either way, or any of those ways, it's perfectly acceptable for stitching any number of design components. So for example, if you have it in the position that it's in right now, where the 5 stitches are upright, or at least fanned out so that they're pointing outward, that's a great stitch, or a great orientation for the stitch if you were going to stitch a treetop. It's also great for garlands, Christmas garlands, Christmas trees, and you can also, like I said, flip it upside down, and it would be suitable for those same applications. So very versatile stitch. If you lay it on its side, turn it 90 degrees either direction and lay it on its side, it's a good stitch. In addition to all those other applications, it's good for bird feathers. So we've been talking about foliage, but you can also use it for bird feathers. Another use as far as foliage is concerned, in addition to trees, Christmas trees, garland, you could use it for wreaths, Christmas wreaths. You can also use it for flower box foliage, or window box foliage. It makes really great greenery in a window box. And another use for it would be for individual leaves on maybe a stem of flowers. So lots, like I said, lots of different applications. So I'm going to share with you how to actually do this stitch. So hang on tight while I hop back over here, and I'm going to get in a place where I can get the video ready to go. And I'm going to share the full screen so that you can see this, and we'll watch how to do the diamond race stitch together. Well, hello there. Ready to learn how to work the diamond race stitch? Terrific. Let's go ahead and dive in. Now, the diamond race stitch is an eyelet stitch, and that's because several stitches share a single hole. So you'll notice on your stitch diagram that only the odd numbers are shown. That's because all of the stitches go into that same space, into that one canvas hole. All righty, so we're going to work the first stitch, which is the longest stitch, and it's the center stitch, and it is worked over 4 canvas threads. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then take that stitch down into the hole. So there's your very first stitch. Your next stitch is going to be one that we're going to do. The next 2 stitches actually are the shortest stitches in the unit. So if you'll look at your stitch diagram, you'll notice that number 7 should start here, and number 3 is down one more diagonal intersection from the starting point of the stitch. So we're going to come up there. So we've counted down from the starting point of this stitch. We've counted down 2 canvas intersections, and we're going to take this stitch into the same ending hole that first stitch had. Now, to get ourselves in position for the stitch that matches this one on the other side, all we have to do is the same thing, but just go this direction. So there's 1 canvas intersection, 2 canvas intersections. And there is your, actually the third stitch, the second short stitch, but the third stitch in the unit. All right, now to fill in, all we have to do is go back and fill in that stitch on the left first, followed by the one on the right. So we're filling in that little space that we created when we did these first 2 short stitches. And there you have a diamond ray stitch unit. Now the units are connected as you work your way across the row. So what you want to make sure that you do is you count your spaces correctly. So there are 4 canvas threads in between the top of each unit. So we're going to count over 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I'm going to again count down 1, 2, 3, 4. And do the same thing that I did the first time. Now you'll see this is where the units share a hole. So the little short stitches are going to share a hole in these horizontal rows. All right, we'll do one more. And then I'll show you how to go back and fill in the second row. All right, there is a single row of diamond ray stitches. Now, to work the second row, what we're going to do is we're going to work these units, but they're going to be somewhat staggered. So they're going to, a unit of this type will fit into this little gap here that was created by the ones on the first row. So what we have to do is come up in the center
between those 2 units, those last 2 units that we did on the first row, and it's going to share a hole. This unit is going to share that same hole as the side stitches on the last 2 on the first row. We're going to count down 1, 2, 3, 4. And then again, we're going to, now this is where visual comes in super handy. So you can look at your stitch guide, or excuse me, your stitch diagram, and see that up under there is there is a little hole up under there. You can look on the diagram and see it a little bit easier. But the stitch that these stitches, these short stitches, are going to share a hole with these stitches here and with these stitches here. So really your visual cues are previously stitched units. Okay, then I'm going to jump over here and come up. Something to keep in mind, and I do need to grab my lay-in tool real quick. Hang on. I'll use my Stitcher's Best Friend for this. This is a good demonstration of how this little gadget works. So what you're going to need to do is you've got to have something to push these threads out of the way so that you can come up in the right hole for your unit or for your stitch. So you push that up out of the way, and then you can work that stitch, and you're going to need to do the same thing over here. Push that up out of the way. Make sure that you're coming up in the right space, and try really hard not to split your thread. And this is a very good time to mention that whenever you're doing a stitch like this, an eyelet type stitch like this, what you need to remember is that you need to use a thread that's thinner than what you typically would use, because you do have so many stitches sharing holes. So that, my friend, is how you do the diamond raised stitch.
All right. So let me go and let's see, we're going to stop sharing the screen there. And let's see, let me make sure that we're not going to back up and get anything extra started here that we don't want to get started. So there we go. Oh, I have a picture. I want to make sure that I share this picture with y'all of what it looks like stitched up. So let me go back to sharing my screen. So let's see, here we go. Let's see, one sec. It is going to be here. All right, so you can see that's what the diamond raised stitch looks like worked up. And this is an example of what it looks like worked in a multicolored thread, or some people call, well, so conversation for a whole nother conversation is the different kinds of multicolored threads. This is an over-dyed thread. You have a variety of different ways to get a multicolor thread. And there are some other videos here on our YouTube channel about that. So make sure you check those out as well, so we don't go into that, down that rabbit hole or into that conversation right now, because we do want to keep things focused on the diamond raised stitch. But this is what the diamond raised stitch looks like when it's worked in an over dyed thread. So it's a beautiful stitch. You can see actually a little bit of the variation in color. So if you used an over-dyed thread like Threadworks, or perhaps, let me stop the share on this now. So if you used an over-dyed thread like, say, perhaps Threadworks or Karen Collections Water Lilies or Watercolors, Weeks Dye Works Cotton Floss, all of those would be beautiful options for you if you were working the diamond raised stitch, especially for foliage. And this doesn't necessarily just apply to green foliage. If you're thinking like we're going into the fall season, and if you happen to have a canvas that has trees that are in fall color, then you could use they have some beautiful reds. I know Weeks Dye Works has one called Merlot that is just gorgeous. And it would be really pretty for, say, maybe a scarlet maple in full color in the fall. I do have another picture I wanted to make sure that I shared with you so that you could see what the stitch looks like, because you're not necessarily limited to doing this stitch. Hold on one second. I'm going to have to find that picture. Here we go. So you can... we're going to keep our fingers crossed that this is going to work. So y'all hold tight. while I do this too. So hang on, let's see, we're going to go to, there we go. There it is. So you can see this is the diamond race stitch worked on a canvas. This is the Lavender Fields canvas that I just taught a class for back in the spring. And you can see that I've used a stranded thread, and in the part where you see some gold, I used multiple colors in my needle. So there are single strands of thread, but there are multiple strands in the needle. And in order to create a look that had sort of a gold and green combination, you can see that I blended in my needle different colors of thread so that you can get that effect. Now, I want to show you again. Let me stop sharing that screen so that you can see the full picture, so you can kind of get the full, well, not kind of, so you can get the full effect. So let's see, let me share my screen again. And I know I'm going to be moving some things around, but y'all bear with me one second. So here we go. This is the completed Lavender Fields piece. So you can see down at the bottom, I used the diamond race stitch to create the foliage and used a variety of different threads. Some of them were multicolored threads. Some of them were multiple colors of thread in the same needle. So that just gives you an idea about what that stitch can look like when it's executed on a finished canvas. All righty, so let me stop sharing my screen now. And let's see, let me make sure that I'm not forgetting anything. I think that's it. That is it. So that is all about the diamond race stitch. I want to make sure that, if anybody has any questions, let me see if anybody has typed any questions in that I've missed. I want to make sure that I get those answered. And if you happen to think about, a question later and want to come back and post it in the comments, please make sure that you do that, because I keep an eye on these and I try to get them answered ASAP. Sometimes things go awry and I don't get back right away, but I do try to make sure that I get your questions answered. So if you found this video helpful, please let me know down in the comments below. And if you have any questions or if anything was confusing, let me know that too, because it's always helpful for me to know what I can do to make these episodes more useful and helpful for you. So I did notice Nancy asked, she said, so upside down version to compensate along top or first row. So I guess if you do an upside down version, Nancy, I'm not real clear on what your question is. So if you turn it upside down, I'm reading the question out loud. So upside down version to compensate along the top or the first row. So yes, what you would do if you turned it upside down, you're still going to be compensating within the area that you're working the stitch. So you would have to come in and work. Once you work the completed units, you would just come back in afterwards and fill in the gaps along the top. It's going to depend on the shape that you're working with, but yes, you would compensate. You're going to be compensating basically the same way. You just have to realize that your angle of your stitches is going to need to stay fluid with the direction that you're actually working the stitch based on the diagram. So hope that makes sense. And if you have any questions, please feel free to continue the conversation. I'm more than happy to help. If you are watching this as a recording, please make sure that if you have any questions, please leave those here too. And I will also invite you all, if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure you click that little red button. And then if you want to get notifications in your email about when we're going live, click the little bell too, because that'll make sure that you get notified anytime there's something new that's been posted here. I appreciate so very much you all being here with me. I know somebody just said that they love the idea of mixing the colors. Thanks for the tip. You are ever so welcome. I thank all of you for being here with me. Those of you who are here live, I thank you for watching this as a recording. If you're watching it as a recording, I hope you have a terrific rest of your day. And until next time, happy stitching. Bye for now.